I will say that old-time music, though, for these days is like not as old as I would think. You think of old-time music like the standards from the 40s, they're listening to like, Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
And they call it classic.
Right. Except what's that?
Okay,
What is
come on.
that? Welcome to Caregiver Forum Stories. I'm Grace Hobson with A Place for a Mom. The theme of today's stories is senior living. I'm talking with Heidi Shelton, and she knows a lot about senior living.
Well, Grace, I do work for A Place for Mom, and I help our senior living advisors. I train them to get them prepared to talk with families as their loved ones are going through the transition into senior living.
Great.
And then I also have my own personal aging parents, so I guess I have some experience both on the professional side as well as the personal side.
That's great. Okay, let's start with a Reddit post titled, Going on a Trip, Short-Term Stay for Mom at a Senior Facility. And this is a thread on Caregiver Support. So yeah, this is something I had no idea about until I started working at A Place for Mom. I'm going on a trip out of the country early next year, and I'm wondering if senior living places allow 1 week or 2 week stays. That seems like the best solution, as Mom has severe anxiety about being left alone at any point. Has anyone needed a short-term stay for the senior they care for, and how did you approach it? I bet you get these calls a lot.
We do. And to be honest with you, Grace, it's important for families to be able to still have those trips. It's important for them to still have some autonomy to be able to do things that they want in life. So what's nice about communities is not all of them, but quite a few of them offer what we say is respite stays. It could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be a month, but it allows that senior to really partake of that community. They are considered a resident for that time frame. They get to use the community activities. They get to be a part of any of the social events. They get to eat the food, they get to stay, and just be considered a resident for that time frame. And then it gives a lot of comfort for that family knowing that their loved one is taken care of. So what's important to know, though, is that communities vary across the board.
Okay.
Some of them have a minimum requirement for that stay, some of them don't. But it's a lot of work and paperwork for that community. It's the exact same work as if somebody was moving in for a permanent stay.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
And it's just on an individual community basis.
Wow. So does A Place for Mom help find families respite stay just like they would a long-term stay?
Yeah, absolutely, Grace.
Oh.
So our advisors can do a filter and learn which ones do offer respite.
Okay. So you call A Place for Mom. They help you find a list of communities that are taking respite care.
Absolutely.
So what's the minimum respite care generally? I mean, could you go for like a weekend?
It's community specific, but what I have heard is that a week would probably be really minimum. Not very many would allow just a week. It's about that 2 week mark.
2 weeks. Okay, that's good to know. So if you're going to go on a trip, you might as well go on a 2 week vacation. Take
that extra time.
Exactly. Yeah, respite care is such a fascinating thing. I had no idea about it until I worked for A Place for Mom, and so important for families, as you pointed out. That's a really good point. It's like helpful for the senior, but also help for those families. Helps with caregiver burnout. That's a tough issue, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And this is an opportunity for the senior to try it before they might buy it. Too. So within those 2 weeks, they might have friends. They might have common interests with other residents and realize, hey, this is not bad. Somebody's cooking for me. Somebody's doing my laundry. Somebody's doing all the things for me. So it could be a step towards a permanent move too.
Wow, that's a really good point. And so let's say you have a caregiver who's not going on a trip. This might be just a great way to try it out, regardless, just to say, let's try respite care. Let's just, dip our toe in the water.
Yep.
Yeah, because some people can't really see themselves in a community until they're in the community. I am always so surprised, or I have always been so struck by all of the reviews that say, I wish I had done this years earlier. So they just couldn't see themselves. And then once they're there, They're like, oh, wow, this is really great. So we have a comment here. It can be done. It all depends on bed availability. What you're looking for is called respite care. So you might look up facilities near you to see if they offer. Yes, they're exactly right,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, we have a Reddit post titled, How Did You Prepare for a Move to Assisted Living? This is from a thread on Caregiver Support. I caretake for my mom who has early onset dementia. She lives with me. I work from home full time. It's a mess that is barely working. We hear those stories a lot. It's hard. We're finally at the place where we're getting referrals for assisted living facilities. I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. This is suddenly moving so quickly, as in if we find one we like in the next 2 weeks, we could be moving in within a few weeks. How did you prepare? I just found out today that her space would likely need to be furnished by us, which surprised me. What else do I need to know? Okay, so let's talk about how we work on that transition.
Well, I mean, I think your space is a personal space. So if this individual's mom has things around her apartment or her home that provides comfort for her, you can even mimic that same setting in her new home at a community. So whether that's an easy chair or whether that's, a comfy blanket or a lamp or what have you, I think that can ease that transition in the event that they find something soon.
Okay. Is that common that usually assisted living is not furnished, that you furnish your own assisted living apartment?
It's going to vary across the board.
So one thing that this brings up is they ask, this person has early onset dementia, as you mentioned, and they're talking about assisted living. So it's interesting that dementia doesn't always mean you have to go into memory care. So do you find that early onset dementia is appropriate for assisted living?
And Grace, it's really going to depend on the senior, or in this case, maybe not even a senior. If that's early onset, it could be in their 50s. But it's going to depend on what the community does in their care assessment.
Okay.
And the nice thing is that a lot of communities offer both an assisted living side as well as a memory care side. So if the community determines that, hey, this individual, they don't need a lot of assistance on a daily basis with their activities. They're pretty self-sufficient, but they do have that diagnosis. They could move into the assisted living side, and then as the needs progress, then they would be able to not have to move out of that community, but perhaps just move to a different wing.
Okay.
And so it's not quite as disturbing as picking them all up, moving them into a whole new place.
Okay.
So
Such a great point. Okay, so you've mentioned twice, also earlier when we were talking about respite care, that assisted living does an assessment. So let's talk about that. When you go into assisted living, they assess what your needs are, correct?
Absolutely. And in fact, I believe all communities will do that. They will have a nurse, director of nurse on site, and then that individual will be responsible for putting together what is called a care plan.
Okay.
And they'll do an assessment, and that's something that has to be done before an individual even moves in.
Okay.
And so they will determine, does that mean that, mom needs to have some assistance with bathing? Does she need some assistance with medication? What does that look like? And they'll put that plan together. And what's nice is that it's unique and individualized for every single senior or every single resident. And then that can change, obviously, as the needs might change for each senior, but at least they have a plan in place.
That's great. Okay. And this isn't something that they're just doing to, cause the family to have to jump through more hoops. This is required by law, correct?
It is. And sometimes that particular community might assess that senior and realize that they can't accommodate the needs that that senior has.
Really good point. So
So-
this is making sure mom gets the care she needs to get at that facility. Make sure that facility can meet her needs.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's great. That's good peace of mind. Okay, so let's talk about some things that you need to have at the ready to get ready to move to assisted living. So some things that pop into my head are like a power of attorney, maybe having a packing list. Some places even have like a senior move manager, right? Can you think of some things that maybe they need to kind of have on a list to get ready for the move?
A lot of communities can provide some of those referrals too.
Good to know.
Yeah, whether that means if they have to do an estate sale or if they have to have movers. They have a lot of great references at the community level that can share with the family.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, and I think a place where Mom has a packing list, and we will put a link to that in the description of this video. We've got great resources for this transition because our senior living advisors have helped lots of families move into senior living. We know what you need. Okay, so this one's kind of juicy. We have a Reddit post titled, "To those who live in senior living or care facilities, what drama is currently causing the biggest stir among the residents, and how do you feel about it?" From a thread on Asking Seniors Questions. Oh, I can't wait to see what they're getting.
Exciting.
I know. I love to hear about the drama. One comment on this is, drum roll please, I know you're waiting.
I can't wait.
Last fall, my neighbor woke pre-dawn to find a deer walking around on the roof of the first floor near her second floor window.
Oh.
Deer had wandered there via an intricate path over the kitchen and through a small opening. Oh my gosh. She had the presence of mind to snap a pic, then call to the front, who sent the maintenance guy out. The deer jumped to the tarmac at his feet, struggled to get up, but was able to join her group after shaking it off a bit. Over Thanksgiving, my 7-year-old grandson, who thinks he's just a tad too mature to believe in reindeer, heard the story and saw the pics. He now thinks that our community is where reindeer hang during the off season. Oh my gosh, I love that. We have a senior living place near us that's like nestled back in the woods, and there's a creek, and a lot of times I'll drive by that place like early in the morning on the way to the gym, and I see deer like prancing around. I wonder if they've ever had anything like that.
I wonder if it's a reindeer.
I wonder if it's a reindeer. Oh my gosh.
That is dramatic.
Yes, that is. But that's a good kind of drama. That's not like drama among residents, which is nice. Yeah. I feel like most of the stories we hear about people in assisted living is they're finding new friends and, maybe some drama over, who wants to date that cute guy down the hall. Okay, we have a Reddit post titled, "Mom Needs Help, Dad Doesn't," from a thread on aging parents. This resonates for me. At some point, my mom is going to need more help than my dad does. This happens a lot with couples, People age differently. There's no reason a couple would age at the same pace, right? Okay, so Mom has a history of not taking care of her health. She was shocked when she learned she was a type 2 diabetic. No getting the mail, making dinner, rarely goes anyplace, etc. Part of that was knee pain, and she just had the knee replaced a few weeks ago. But that revealed that she's so weak from lack of activity that she can't do anything. In the meantime, my dad goes out multiple times a week to hang out with friends and do things. He does all the cooking, cleaning, and chores. Dad was thinking that after the knee heals, it will usher in a new age of mobility and doing things. Truth is, she hasn't gone out of the house unless someone took her in a couple of years. I don't think a new knee is going to help much. My wild optimism is that the forced PT from the knee will improve strength and she'll be able to recover to a reasonable level of activity for someone her age. More realistically, I suspect nothing will change and she will need much more care in just a couple of years. Do they continue to live in the same house or get outside help? It's a 2-story house. The stairs will become an issue. Or do they move into someplace which might be more suitable for Mom, but unnecessary for Dad? Okay, so tell us what we do in that situation. I know that's a hard one that you see a lot.
It is tough. It is, Grace, because, this is a couple that wants to stay together.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that they're thinking ahead. They're
Good.
anticipating the fact that after the knee surgery, Mom might still have some issues with mobility, might still have some issues with the stairs. So if they're going to go the direction that they're assuming that Mom doesn't get much better.
Yeah, probably most likely.
It sounds like that. They have an idea already.
Yeah.
Communities, as we talked about, do that individual assessment. And if they were to assess both the husband and wife, they might learn that Mom would be better suited in the assisted living side. And then perhaps the husband would be better suited in the independent or retirement community side. And
Would
that
they
is-
separate?
They could.
Wouldn't it be just better? I would just think just to go in assisted living and then
They both
Can
live together.
Okay.
Yep, that's another option too.
Let's talk about that.
Yes.
They both go in assisted living.
Yes.
But they pay for care for mom, but they don't have to pay for care for dad, right?
Well,
No, how does
communities
that
would
work?
have an additional fee
Okay,
for
for the second person?
Yeah, because
Okay.
they're still taking advantage of the meals and the
Sure.
activities.
Oh, sure. I just
Yep.
meant like care fees. Is
Yeah.
that a thing?
There's usually a low, medium, and high care fee
Okay.
that is associated based on that assessment. And so everybody would be assessed one of those levels of care,
Okay.
and the fee would be appropriate.
Okay, so let's talk about the opposite. Could they both go together in independent living and maybe they bring in some home care for mom?
Yeah.
Because independent living, wouldn't that be still safer than their two-story house?
Absolutely.
Is that a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And you're speaking the truth, because
Okay.
there's a lot of communities that, even though they're independent living or retirement communities, they have a third party on site, and
Okay.
so they can
Oh.
accommodate some of those activities of daily living if needed.
Okay, so talk to me about that.
Mm-hmm.
So you wouldn't even have to hire your own home care agency. The independent living community has an agency and they can help out.
Some of them do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
very convenient. Of course, they would charge a fee for
Sure.
the care, but yeah, they would be able to do that on site, and oftentimes that's less expensive
Oh.
than assisted living.
Okay. Okay, so now let's talk about places where you've got independent living and assisted living, because you were talking about that. Mom goes to assisted living, dad, independent living. But as far as amenities, like dad could still play pickleball while living in the assisted living portion, correct? Like he could still do his fun activities?
Those are great questions to ask the communities when they're touring
Okay.
and really taking a look at what's the right fit for them.
Okay, really good question. Okay, so we have a touring guide. We'll link it in the description. It is a PDF you can print out or you can put it on your iPad or your phone, and you can take notes and you can get questions ready. So we definitely want to ask these facilities if you can have two people, if you can be in the independent living or the assisted living, what amenities you can take advantage of in that community. Put all your questions in your touring sheet and then go ask them. Okay, we have a comment here. It's good that you're thinking about this now because you don't want to have to do this in an emergency situation. Oh my gosh, that is so true. My mother wasn't quite ready for assisted living, but her husband needed 24/7 care, so they went in together so they could live together. The added benefit is that they have a physical therapy company with an office on site, so it's very easy to get PT and OT every day. They both get it periodically throughout the year for different things. You might think about a place that has independent living connected to assisted living. They're speaking our language. So that they get some assistance like cleaning and can move up in care when needed, but also have the ability to go for meals in the AL versus cooking and making 3 meals or more per day. They can also participate in the activities there. Okay, this commenter is totally on it. I love it. Okay. We have another Reddit post. It's titled Assisted Living Do's and Don'ts, Please. Okay, this is from a thread on aging parents. Today, my dad said he's interested in going into assisted living. My mom passed almost 1 year ago and they lived at home. He's been doing pretty okay, has a caregiver twice a week. He just doesn't really want to deal with the house and all of that stuff. Totally get that. No other family or real friends to help. He's very independent and really wants to do things the way he wants to. Not a bad way. He's technically savvy, that's great. Has a bit of memory loss. For his age, he's in great shape. I'd like advice on where to start looking. I went through this last year, ended up not going that route. What things should I look for online? Okay, we can help a lot with that, right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of other referral services out there, but she could reach out to a referral service. A Place for Mom's a great example, and have somebody do an assessment over the phone. And it's not necessarily a physical assessment, but they will talk about the care needs. They'll talk about finances. They'll really understand what that individual likes to do. And then they can match the communities that are a good fit based on all of that.
Okay.
And that's
And
a good place to start.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. It sounds too like they're saying assisted living, but independent living might be an option for him. He does have some memory loss, but what an adult child thinks is memory loss versus what is actually memory loss. That might not be the same thing. That's where that care assessment from the community comes in, and maybe if they're referred to some places that have both, they can assess and say, hey, he's actually pretty great. He can use independent living.
My sweet mom, in her late 70s, just told me this week that she's forgetting things.
Oh.
And of course, my first instinct is, oh, it's okay, Mom. No big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But to her, it's a big deal. Mm-hmm. And it's not interfering, with her everyday life.
Good.
So memory loss is just a natural part of getting older. As long as they're still able to do what they want to do and that they're not getting hurt, it's just a natural piece of life.
Right. Hey, that's a good point. And there is a difference between normal aging memory loss and signs of dementia. And you know what? We will put a link to an article on that in the description. We've got an article that explains that difference. Okay, we have an aging care post titled, "What type of questions should I ask when interviewing an assisted living place? I have a list of my own, but don't want to miss something." Okay, great question. So talk to us about questions they should ask.
Well, you always want to ask, are there any promotions?
Oh, good. Start with the money. I like it. Okay.
Money's kind of the big piece of moving into a community because it's not cheap. So ask if there are any promotions.
Great
ask
idea.
if there's any specials.
Yeah.
I think
and what
that's a
about
big
veterans benefits? A lot of our folks who use our service have some connection. So, okay, sorry, go on.
No, there's a lot of veterans. It's a really good question to put on your list.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So pricing, what are some other things?
I've heard that it would be nice to know who actually has keys to the apartment.
Oh, interesting. I like it. Okay.
It would be nice also to know what kind of monitoring they have,
Oh, good
whether that's a monitor that they put around their neck, their wrist. That would be nice to know.
Talk to me about questions about the staff. What about, are there ratios that a community can usually tell somebody? Does the community know exactly what their breakdown is of like nurses versus, how many CNAs they might have on a shift?
They sure should.
Okay,
Yes. So I
great.
think that's something else you could add to the list too.
Okay. What about training of staff? Do communities train their staff regularly? Is that a thing?
I think it depends on the community. Yeah, and the level of care.
Okay.
I've heard that a lot of memory care communities train even their dishwashers and maintenance individuals and how to handle those individuals that have memory issues.
Okay. Love
because
it.
they might run across them on the community side. So
Okay.
yeah,
Good.
I think that's a great one to add too.
Good,
Grace.
good. Yeah. How about some ask about activities?
Yes.
Let's say mom is a gardener. Do they have gardening beds? I've learned so much about really interesting programs that assisted living offers. Let's talk about a Reddit post titled, "What's it like being in assisted living?" This is from a thread on asking seniors questions. Okay, so people are asking what it's like to be in assisted living, and we've got some comments here. "My father was in assisted living / memory care. He had Alzheimer's," it says. "The meme is that it's not good, but in my father's situation, that was not accurate at all. He lived in a very nice assisted living place. Clean, great food, great help there, and had his own private room with a bathroom and shower. He had a couch, TV, and a refrigerator. They had a 24-hour nurse at the place. My sister lived really close. In addition to the memory care part, there was another assisted living place at the same location for people that didn't need memory care. They had a couple of pet cats there. Oh, that's so nice. Really good food too, and lots of things to do. Digressing, at my father's place, they also had a community room with couches, a big screen TV, piano, books, games. They had various musicians there who would play old-time music and try to get the residents involved." I will say that old-time music, though, for these days is not as old as I would think. You think of old-time music like the standards from the 40s, they're listening to Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
And they call it classic.
Right. What's that?
Okay,
What
come
is
on.
that? Okay, I digress. We could go there anytime we wanted, and we had the key code for the door to get in. The cost was about $4,500 a month. Okay, that's a good, nice description. "When my mom entered assisted living in 2014, she was the first resident to have a computer or use email. I love it. 8 years later, it's uncommon not to have a computer and a smartphone, and the Wi-Fi is just fine. Okay, that's good. So, yeah, so that's painting a picture of, it's not your father's assisted living. Like what we think of, what we used to call the rest home. Remember that?
I do.
The rest home. Assisted living is not like that. They are having fun, right?
They are. And speaking of fun, I mean, they call it a cruise ship on land, but with care.
That's great.
Because there's such a large focus in assisted living on the activities that are going to speak best to the residents. And in fact, if an assisted living doesn't have a good, strong activities list that meets the interests of the seniors, and good food.
Good food.
Oftentimes, these places have chefs that are making amazing food, because that's like a big social activity, is to eat the food and to, make sure that it has good food and good activities. That's two main really components of an assisted living community.
Yeah, I love it.
It speaks to them.
Absolutely. And the food, they have these restaurant style dining. You can get kosher meals. You can get gluten-free meals. You can be vegan in assisted living. And like you said, professional chefs.
Yeah.
Oh, and you can, if you're wondering what it's like, go tour, have a guest meal.
Yep.
Enjoy a meal there. In fact, I think that's one of the best things to do when you tour is have a meal there. You're going to meet people. You're going to talk to residents who will tell you what it's like.
Yeah. And assisted living, Grace, I mean, I think they range all across the board. You could easily go into one that's more modern with, like modern furnishings, the crown molding, all of that. And then you might go into another assisted living that is very home-like.
Right.
So that's why touring is important, because you will get a feeling for, hey, is this going to speak to me? Is this the right place for my mom or for me? Or do I need to keep looking for that place that just hits home for you?
Yeah, that is such a good point. We actually have an assisted living place in our neighborhood. It's just one of the houses in our neighborhood that was renovated into an assisted living place. The only reason you could tell is that they made a great big circle driveway with a ramp, and it's a really homey atmosphere. You might not know if you're looking for that homey atmosphere if you haven't toured it.
Yeah.
Or you may go into a bigger community and go, this is super homey, but then there's also this, arts and crafts room that you might not get in a home setting.
Yeah.
Our last Reddit post is titled Independent Living with Additional Care versus Assisted Living, from a thread on aging parents. My mom was preparing to move out of her apartment and into an independent living center in the next few months, but then she fell and broke her femur and is now in a rehab center recovering. It is going to be a long recovery, and we are anticipating that she will need a lot of help, personal care, when she leaves the rehab center. I'm trying to understand if it makes more sense for her to go to the independent living center that she was going to and bring in her own care full time or near full time, or instead go to an assisted living center. She does have a long-term care policy that will pay for personal care outside of an assisted living center. Great. So what would be the difference? Has anyone here weighed those two options? Okay, so let's talk about that. What is the big difference between independent living with some care versus assisted living? And how do you determine which is best?
Well, as long as that on-site home care can accommodate with all of the needs that senior has, I think sometimes it comes down to money.
Good point. Okay.
Because the independent living with the on-site home care might be less expensive than assisted living.
They do have long-term care insurance that would pay for either one. So I'm wondering if then they do an assessment, like maybe do some tours, have the independent living center do an assessment. Can you do that when the person is in rehab? How does that work?
So the good thing is that the community will ultimately make the decision.
Good point. Take it out of your
Yeah,
hands.
exactly. They'll do that assessment, and then based on what those care needs are, we'll determine which direction that senior should go. They can actually, some of the communities I've heard can actually even go visit a senior's home to do that assessment.
Great.
If they are homebound. So there is some flexibility, is dependent on that community.
Okay, so they could go to the rehab center and, maybe even meet with her physical therapist.
They're willing to work with seniors, and that's what's so nice, is that communities are really willing to be flexible.
Right, that's great. And a senior living advisor can help you by giving you lots of options, an option with assisted living and independent living on the same campus. Or you could tour just an independent living place that has that care, or you tour maybe a smaller home even to see if that's what your parent is more interested in. Okay, so let's see what our commenters have to say. There are many retirement homes that have independent levels and assisted living levels, which allow for easier transitions between floors as she recovers. I moved my dad into assisted living last year following a stroke, and it's been suggested now that we move him into the hybrid floor that has half independent residents and half assisted living. Okay, that's great to hear that Dad is recovering so well. Isn't that great to hear?
Great news.
Yeah, I love that. And I didn't know that about hybrid floors. That's super cool. Okay, that's all we have today. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and be sure to look for the description for all those links that I talked about. We have so much information that we can offer you about senior living. And as always, check out all the resources and information we have at aplaceformom.com. Thank you. Have a great day.